The lands that would one day form the Dutch Republic began as a loose confederation called the 17 Provinces. In 1543, Charles V, Holy Roman Emperor and King Charles I of Spain, inherited them and brought them under direct rule. For a time, this arrangement held, but in 1566, tensions boiled over. The Protestant Dutch revolted against the Catholic Spanish crown, igniting the 80 Years' War. Even as the struggle for independence unfolded, the Dutch began turning their attention outward, looking to establish trading posts and colonies across the globe. Their rise as a maritime and commercial power would reshape world history, but their empire would not last forever. By the late 1500s, trade was becoming the lifeblood of Europe. Coastal cities were gateways to wealth, and few rivaled Amsterdam in importance. With efficient access to capital and an ever-growing merchant fleet, the Dutch expanded beyond northern Europe, venturing into the Mediterranean, the Levant, and eventually across oceans to Africa, Asia, and the Americas. This expansion brought them into direct competition with Portugal, whose empire dominated global trade routes. Portuguese colonial outposts in Brazil, Africa, and the Indian Ocean were prime targets for Dutch merchants and privateers. The Iberian Union, 1580 to 1640, united Spain and Portugal under one crown, meaning Dutch hostilities with Spain also extended to Portugal's overseas possessions. In 1629, the Dutch set their sights on Pernambuco, Brazil's richest sugar-producing region. A fleet of 65 ships secured the territory, and Dutch Brazil, also called New Holland, was born. Yet the occupation was never stable. In 1640, Portugal regained independence from Spain, and by 1645, Portuguese planters in Brazil launched a major revolt against Dutch rule. Two decisive battles, the First and Second Battles of Guararapes, sealed Dutch defeat. By 1654, the Portuguese had retaken Recife, ending Dutch Brazil. The loss rippled across the Atlantic. Within a few years, Portuguese forces also expelled the Dutch from Angola, 1648. While fortunes faded in South America, the Dutch West India Company was building a colony further north. Along the Hudson River, fur trading posts like Fort Orange, in modern-day Albany, thrived. In 1625, the fortified settlement of New Amsterdam was founded on Manhattan Island. But rising tensions with England threatened this foothold. The English Navigation Acts of 1651 restricted Dutch access to lucrative colonial trade, sparking the Anglo-Dutch Wars. In 1664, English forces seized New Netherland. Though the Dutch briefly regained it in 1673, the following year it was permanently ceded to England, leaving only a lasting Dutch cultural imprint on the region. The Dutch Empire also faced challenges on the other side of the world. In Taiwan, then called Formosa, Dutch forces clashed with Ming loyalist General Zhang Chenggong, Koxinga. After a 9-month siege of Fort Zeelandia, the Dutch surrendered in 1662, ending their rule over the island. Later, during the American Revolutionary War, Britain targeted Dutch colonies again, capturing Ceylon, Sri Lanka, during the Fourth Anglo-Dutch War. Though returned temporarily in 1783, Ceylon would eventually be lost for good to the British. In the mid-17th century, Dutch settlers had also established a presence at the Cape of Good Hope in South Africa. But in 1795, France invaded the Dutch Republic, transforming it into the Batavian Republic, effectively a French satellite state. Britain, at war with France, seized Dutch colonies in South Africa, Asia, and the Caribbean. The Treaty of Amiens, 1802, briefly restored some territories, but Ceylon remained British. Renewed war in 1803 led to further losses. The British recaptured the Cape Colony and seized Java in 1811. Napoleon dissolved the Batavian Republic in 1806, placing his brother Louis Bonaparte as King of Holland. But by 1810, the Netherlands was ruled directly from France until its liberation in 1813. The Anglo-Dutch Treaty of 1814 confirmed Britain's permanent possession of Cape Colony, Guyana, and Ceylon. Tensions continued in Southeast Asia, especially over Singapore, which the British had secured in 1819. The Anglo-Dutch Treaty of 1824 resolved these disputes by dividing the region into spheres of influence. Britain kept Singapore and Malacca, while the Dutch solidified control over the islands south of the strait, expanding their hold over what became the Dutch East Indies, modern-day Indonesia. For over a century, the Dutch East Indies remained the crown jewel of their empire. But in 1942, Japan invaded during World War II, exploiting the territory's rich natural resources. Japanese occupation weakened Dutch control and fueled local nationalist movements. 2 days after Japan's surrender in August 1945, Indonesian leaders declared independence. The Dutch tried to reassert authority, sparking a bitter 4-year conflict. Under mounting international pressure, the Netherlands formally recognized Indonesian sovereignty in December 1949. The Dutch Empire was built on maritime trade rather than vast land-based conquest. Like the Portuguese, they preferred strategic outposts and smaller colonies in key locations, leveraging them for commerce. While this model brought wealth and influence, it also left their holdings vulnerable to rivals with larger militaries and greater resources. By the mid-20th century, the age of European colonial empires was ending. The Netherlands, like its neighbors, saw its overseas territories gain independence. What remained was a legacy of exploration, trade, and cultural exchange, along with a reminder